To check your progress in listening and note-taking skills against your skills when you began the program, proceed now to Examination B, where once again you will hear two statements to which you will respond just as you have throughout this program.
As we conclude the program in effective listening, we want to test the development of your skills in listening to different kinds of voices and messages and your skills in note-taking. To proceed, you'll be asked to write summaries of two statements. Each statement will be presented and then followed by a tone. Do not write your summary until the tone has sounded. For your summary, you should try to reflect the speaker's main point and the supporting reasons. The summary should not contain irrelevant material. Remember, you should not take written notes during the message or begin to write your response until the tone is sounded. Let's begin.
Sure, you can say he's the owner's son and all that, but I'm glad I'm in his department. Why, the other day, one of the employees, Ken, you know, the tall one with glasses who sits at the desk by the door? Well, anyway, it was the day that the thunderstorm hit, just after work started. He was a little bit late. He was coming in from the parking lot when the rain, you remember how it began to pour for about half an hour just in buckets? By the time he got into the building, he was drenched. Naturally, he didn't have a coat or an umbrella, the way the storm came up on all that all of a sudden. So he told him not to worry about it and that he should go home, change, and come back. And he didn't even mention him being late. He could just as easily have made him sit there and do his work for the sake of upholding principle.
No,
yes?
I'm looking for Susan.
I'm sorry, she's not here right now. Anyway, back to what we were talking about. Really, though, who could sit there and do their work right with their clothes all wet? He'd probably catch cold from the air conditioning, too. Sure, it's good to have air conditioning, but some days you need to have a coat to be comfortable inside, even when it's 90 degrees outside. He's lenient like that in a lot of things. Like, suppose someone needs to leave early to go home for some special reason. He'll let you go as long as you don't abuse it. And here's something that a lot of people don't notice. I mean about the pattern of their work. Whether you have a steady pace so that you know what's coming, or you keep getting last-minute rush things to do and keep shifting from one thing to the next, I guess most people notice that. What they don't realize is that a lot of that depends upon their supervisor. Instead, they just figure that's the way it is. In my section, we always have a good idea of what's going on any given day and enough time to do it. That's because he plans out the work that has to be done. This may not seem very important, but it is. I know because I've worked in other sections too. Some of the other supervisors aren't careful about their dress, but you can't say that about him. His clothes always look nice. I don't mean he never loosens his ties or rolls up his sleeves, because he does. He always comes in a suit, and I'm sure he has the money to buy good clothes, but it's to his credit that he's always dressed that way. Some of the other supervisors come in casual pants or skirts and knit shirts, and they look like they're on their way to the golf course, which they probably are, but you just watch what he wears. You'll see what I mean. And as far as the job is concerned, he sticks to his own department. A lot of people in his shoes would be wandering around all day from one department to the next, sticking their noses into things, saying this and that and how they want things done. And just because of who their parents are, you better do it. Sure, he tells me what to do, but he's my boss. But suppose he comes up to you, asks you to do something right away when you're rushing or something, or doing something for your own boss. What would you do? You'd have to do it for him just because of who he is and all that. But wouldn't that be fair? I mean, it wouldn't, would it? I mean, could your boss say anyhow? Well, he doesn't do that, and I think that's important, even though he'll be everyone's boss in a few more years. Just the same, he's friendly to all of us, you know? He asks how you are, about your family, and things like that, and he really means it.
Just as we associate film stars with palatial homes, writers with unpredictable working hours, and Wall Street brokers with iron nerves and large bank accounts, so also there are special characteristics with which we associate wine drinkers, not winos, Not those who consume wine and then are themselves consumed by it, but the connoisseurs who understand wine and appreciate it. They are readily discernible by the diversity of their interests, the nearest approximations to the Renaissance individual, the Da Vincis, who care about art, medicine, love, and science. They do not appear, as cartoonists delight in depicting them, as funny little creatures with pinpoint craniums, delicate features, and giant lower lips that look like those plants that trap insects, but appear instead as people whose breadth of interests and range of interests are outstanding. Omar Khayyam, the wine connoisseur imaged to the public, with his loaf of bread and jug of wine, is often thought of as a lecher and a hedonist. But he was a great mathematician and an astronomer whose interests ranged in every direction. I'm speaking of those distinctive individuals you see touching the wine glass to their lips, the connoisseurs. One sure characteristic of these people is that they are interested in thermonuclear engineering, 12-tone musical experimentation, and avant-garde art. If you look closely, you will note that, or you may not need to look too closely to note it, their chosen life partners will be physically stunning. For the lover of good wines is also the lover of physical beauty. True, there is self-satisfaction in lifting the glass, sampling its fragrance, and participating in its understanding. But as you do, you also develop another connoisseur characteristic, a sense of taste. The palate gains in skill. To the untrained taste bud, it is impossible to detect shades of spice, fruit, or complexity of flavor. These all appear the same. But to the developed taste bud, the chef's decision to add the least grain of spice, the decision to let the flame linger, these are decisions the connoisseur can appreciate and share. Nor should you think this delicacy of taste is restricted to the product of the vineyard. The stereotyped conception of the connoisseur sampling the glass and telling the difference between a 1997 and a 2001 vintage, which in fact can be readily developed with care, is not a growth merely in vintage skill, but a general increase in taste. And always, the connoisseur is respected. This sense of respect, which of course is not verbalized, finds expression in dozens of little ways and is really characteristic. It is accorded virtually every person who understands the grape. Even the part-time bookseller or mechanic, and probably even the professional politician connoisseur, is dependably respected.